My name is Dr. Daniel Fox, and I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Texas and an expert in the area of personality disorders. And I've been getting a lot of requests lately to do a video about what partners, parents, and children can do for those in their life that have borderline personality disorder or that have borderline personality disorder traits. So I thought that I would make this video to give 3 suggestions and helpful tips. And one of the things that I want to talk about first is a little bit about the research and what we find when you talk about sort of the family system and the interpersonal environment when someone in that environment has borderline personality disorder or borderline personality disorder traits. And what one research study found that there's been this elevated level of criticism and emotional over-involvement in environments that represent this dynamic that tends to have high conflict, a lot of anxious concern, overprotection, and a lot of emotional closeness though as well when you include an individual that has a borderline personality disorder. And I'll put the references to these studies that I'm going to talk about in the details for this video. And the other research study, what they talk about is this sort of familial internalizing, which is when you internalize it, it tends to produce, when you internalize a lot of the stress and the anxiety and other types of issues, that when you internalize this, that it can lead to some depression and anxiety for those family members, but it can also lead to some externalizing behaviors as well, which can be managed with substance abuse and other types of externalized issues. So what we want to do is when we know that someone that's in our interpersonal circle has borderline personality disorder, borderline personality disorder traits, you can do 1, 2, or all 3 of these suggestions that I'm going to give you, and hopefully it'll help to create an easier environment for you as well as that individual in your life that is dealing with these borderline personality disorder traits or full disorder. So the first one that I want to talk about is sort of tracking those moods and shifts and what are those triggers. So what we need to do is we need to build the information that we know about the individual in your life that has those traits and personality components. Now what I'm going to do is I'm also going to put a link in the description for this video, and it's a weekly mood tracker that I created specifically for this video and for viewers so that you can try to get a better understanding of what some of these triggers and moods are, when they tend to occur, which day of the week, and is it in the morning, is it in the afternoon, or is it in the evening? And what's important in doing this is that not only will it give you, the parent, caregiver, or partner, an idea of some of these mood fluctuations, but it can also give you an idea as to what is going on, as well as to prepare yourself for some of these cycles if they do tend to occur in a cycle, in a sequence. And now a lot of times, a lot of individuals with borderline personality disorder, that they tend to react to triggers in the environment that are unexpected, and that'll lead us to the next one that we're going to talk about in a second. Before we get to that, I do want to say about the weekly mood tracker is that you please be aware that this is not something to bring to that individual that has borderline personality disorder or those traits and say, see, this is what you do. And you don't want to do that, because what that does is, for a lot of individuals with borderline personality disorder, that they're struggling a lot with not only how they feel about themselves, but also how they feel about the world around them. And they're trying to manage it as best they can. But somewhere along the way, they've developed these maladaptive and negative belief, behaviors, and patterns. And if you think that you're going to shock them or make them feel bad enough where they're going to suddenly have this realization to say, hey, you know what, you're right, I shouldn't do that, I'm going to suddenly magically change and do things differently. That's not what happens. So please be sure to not use the weekly mood tracker as evidence to prove to the individual how bad they are, how broken they are, or anything else. Because what you'll end up with is the exact opposite of what you want. Which is, if you're watching this video, that means you have someone whom you really care about in your life, and you want to realize how to give them a sense of support, and understanding their moods and those fluctuations can help you do that. And that is what the mood tracker is for. And even on the paper, I actually put a statement related to that, because that's how important I think this is. Now, what you can also do if you are working closely with an individual, whether it's a partner, or parent, or child, you can have them fill it out as well, and you can compare your results and see. And if you have a mental health provider, all of you can sort of fill this out, or you can bring it into session and discuss it, which can be very useful, because insight is going to be very critical for the individual that has borderline personality disorder. The more insight he or she has, the greater ability they're going to have, or the greater opportunity they're going to have to try to adjust and change these behaviors. But just because they know it doesn't mean that they're going to be able to change it. So it's a long process and it takes time, but this could be a good first step for you. Now, the second strategy or tip that I want to give you is to try to structure the environment as much as you can, as best that you can. Now, that is really difficult to do that, because we know that there are unexpected changes, that there are unexpected routines that come up. But there is also a lot of things that you can do, that you can put into your life, and that can help the individual with borderline personality disorder, that can help structure it. And so I kind of think of this very, very similar to a treatment program. It's actually called Rainbow, that has been helpful with a lot of kids that have a lot of different mood disorders, or even adults that have bipolar disorder. So what this is that you're creating a very structured environment, or the best structured environment you can, so that individual with borderline personality disorder has less opportunities to trigger in that relationship with you, within that structured environment. And of course, that doesn't mean that they're not going to still be triggered and still have reactions, but if you can lessen the number of reactions that individual's having, that can be a great benefit. And they can see that, and maybe, possibly, that could generalize to other environments as well. So it's creating that structure as best you can. Also within that environment, though, you have to be able to set boundaries. Now, the thing about individuals with borderline personality disorder is that they've been lied to a lot, or they've perceived that they have been inappropriately treated, and in many cases they certainly have, so they're justified in that belief. But what can happen is that those boundaries, or if you don't do what you say and say what you do, that it creates a lot of uncertainty, increase in a lot of anxiety for them, a lot of fear. That fear can kick off abandonment, some of those core structure issues that I talk about in other videos that these individuals are dealing with. And so that can be very problematic for them. And once that core structure gets activated, they end up falling into those negative beliefs, behaviors, and patterns. And so we want to limit that, which is what we're doing. But in setting boundaries, it's boundaries that are very clear as to what you'll tolerate and what you won't. And having a discussion of what's appropriate and what isn't, and setting that boundary for yourself. But if you say it, you have to do it. And a lot of these critical factors in setting up these boundaries, that includes building as much routine as you can, which again goes back to applying that structure. Also, being really clear in communicating. Don't assume that the individual with borderline personality disorder is going to read your mind, or that he or she should know that. It is about being very clear in your communication, very direct, which you can also talk to that other individual as well and talk about some communication strategies. There's a lot of good stuff online about communication strategies. You can also work on some problem-solving strategies as well. I talk about some of those in my other videos as well, about how to identify the problem, assess reaction, and what is the most viable and beneficial solution. You can do that as well. And then sleep hygiene. Sleep is so important. I'm in the US, obviously. I'm in Texas at the moment. But in other parts of the world that I've traveled, or other individuals that I've spoken to in other parts of the world, sleep deprivation is an issue there as well. If you're not on a good sleep cycle, if you are very tired, very worn out, when you have that experience, when that individual with borderline personality disorder is sleep deprived, it is harder for them to contain their reaction. What about for that partner, parent, or child? When they're sleep deprived, it makes it harder for them to put these strategies in place, because you're very tired. And when you're very tired, you have less resources to pull from, and you tend to have more automatic responses, very quick responses, limbic responses. And that's what we want to try to limit, because sometimes that trigger or that unconscious response that individual with borderline personality disorder, the traits, wants or feels like they need is that adverse reaction from you. And that's not what you want. You want to break this cycle. Okay? So you want to try to stir it up a little bit. And the other component is social support. Social support, especially for parents, partners, and children of individuals with borderline personality disorder. That social support is really important. Someone you can talk to, someone who may understand where you're coming from. They may be able to give you some strategies that work. You may be able to give some strategies that work. Please feel free to mention some strategies that work in the comments of this video. That'd be great for people that also see it. But build that positive support system. If alcohol and drugs are an issue, obviously you don't want that in your support system. You shouldn't want drugs in your support system at all. No excessive alcohol use. Probably best to avoid alcohol consumption if you can. So you want to build that positive support system as well. So that was number 2. Now number 3, you want to know what your triggers are for you. So all the work isn't just your partner or your parent or your significant other or your child doing the adjustment. You have to do the adjustment as well. And you have to have your own information. You have to have your own sense of internal awareness of what triggers you, of what sets you off. And what are your moods? What are your fluctuations as well? And you can use that weekly mood tracker in order to get a sense of that for you as well. And that's really important to do that, because the more information you have, the more power and empowered you will feel to have a greater sense of your environment, to have a greater control over your environment. Okay? So those are the 3 tips. The thing that's really important is that with a lot of my clients that have been diagnosed or have traits of borderline personality disorder, what happens is that once they start to grow and change, the family system starts to put pressure on them to go back to their old role, their old place. Now, this is a family systems approach, and I have found it time and time and time and time again. And it's very difficult to break or change your family system, because that system operates, right? Human beings like it when everything is homeostasis. It's everything that we expect it to be. And when we start to change, but even if it's for a positive, we start to grow and develop and create better strategies for ourselves and better opportunities and better outcome. But that system is going to put pressure, and it's not conscious, like, Jim is starting, to have better control of his belief, behaviors, and patterns. He's not cutting himself anymore. He's not drinking anymore. We need to put pressure on him so he goes back to that, because that's who Jim is. It's not. It's an unconscious pressure that they feel. Now, sometimes it can show in individuals that have chemical dependency, and folks that I work with that are sort of breaking that cycle, becoming sober. They go back to that family of origin, and that family of origin starts to put pressure on them about being sober. They start to tease them, give them a lot of pressure. Oh yeah, you're great, you're sober now. Look at you, look how great you are. Oh, Jim, you went to therapy. Jim knows everything. Jim controls all of his behavior. And then when Jim has a moment where he does react in, let's say, for lack of a better way to phrase it, in a manner that fits with that borderline behaviors and patterns, then the family says, see, Jim, you're no different. You're no different. So Jim gets pushed back down to fit into that family system. So we have to be aware that that family system pressure is there. And we have to be able to fight against it. And the way we fight against it is using these 3 techniques and strategies that I just talked about, but also having awareness that it's there, giving these individuals a lot of support. Change can be hard, but it's not impossible. And working with folks with personality disorders, it takes a long time. And that family system pressure slows it down, slows that change, increases the probability of relapse, makes it difficult to really hold on to those adaptive and healthy beliefs, behaviors, and patterns that I want to instill in my clients to do it differently. And they can do it differently. It's possible. It really is, but it becomes this system approach. So if you're watching this, that means that you have someone that you love and care about, and that you want to help them do it differently. But recognize your needs, creating that structured environment, tracking their moods so you have a better understanding of what they're doing and not using it against them. And over the course of time, remember, we have to be very, very patient. I think the shortest amount of time that I worked with someone with borderline personality disorder, they met full criteria for the full disorder, it was probably 1.5 years. And that's a really long time. Now, traits usually takes much less, so it depends upon the individual. But full disorder takes a long time, and traits can take a long time as well. We have to unlearn these negative beliefs, behaviors, and patterns. And you can, though. You really, really can. It does take a lot of work. Another component that I want to talk about is, and things that people have asked me, is what are some other resources? And I want to show you the 4 books that I recommend a lot, and I think that they're really great. And the first book that I want to talk about is this one. It's Stop Caretaking, The Borderline or Narcissist, How to End the Drama and Get On with Life. And I think what I like about this one is that it talks about being a caretaker, about looking after that individual. This is from Dr. Fjelstad. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. I hope she's not upset, but this is a really good book, and you can get it on Amazon. I get no kickbacks from anybody. These are just suggestions. It doesn't mean it's going to work perfectly for you. You have to use your own judgment, okay? And then I got another one. I like this one a lot. Dr. Manning. Dr. Manning's pretty great. She has a really good website, and it's Loving Someone with Borderline Personality Disorder. I think she's pretty great. I've had a couple email interactions with her back and forth. She's been very responsive, very nice individual. So that's Sherry Manning, Loving Someone with Borderline Personality Disorder. Again, these are just things that I recommend. Okay, so another one that I recommend quite often is the Stop Walking on Eggshells. And this is by Paul Mason and Randy Kreger. This is a popular one. It's been out for a while. I recommend this one a lot to a lot of folks that have someone in their life with borderline personality disorder. And then this is the Randy Kreger. This is the Essential Family Guide to Borderline Personality Disorder. And there's some good techniques and other types of things that you can find in there. These are just suggestions. If you don't like these books, then that's okay. But there are people out there who may find some components useful, who may find them very useful. So you can find all of them on Amazon. They've been out for a while, so hopefully they won't be too expensive. But they're just finding resources, and that's what it's about. You can try the 3 techniques here. If you want to go a little deeper, you can try some of those resources, and that's what it's about. It's about building those skills, building those resources, and what fits in with your relationship with this individual. And I know that you'll be able to help them, because if you're taking your time to watch this, it means you have a lot of caring and compassion for them. And a lot of folks that have borderline personality disorder really need that. And they need to know that people are there for them, and that they want to encourage them to develop these adaptive and healthy strategies when they're ready. Okay? So I want to thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Please leave any comments that you may have. Please subscribe to the site if you'd like. That'd be great. And thank you all very much. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.